Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going deep on the research of Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Oh yeah, Dr. Waleed.
This scholar who, well, he brings a really unique perspective to Quranic studies.
Absolutely.
I mean, a marine engineer.
Right.
Who's also a Quranic expert. You don't see that every day.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's that unusual combination that makes his work so fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, Dr. Waleed sets aside the traditional interpretations and approaches the Quran with the precision of an engineer and just the curiosity of a lifelong learner.
Yeah, and, you know, from what I've read, he's uncovered some pretty surprising stuff.
Oh, yeah.
His list of discoveries is over 50 items long.
It's incredible.
We're talking about hidden figures from religious texts, reinterpretations of historical events, even a whole new understanding of the Quran's geography. It's kind of mind-boggling.
It really is.
We've got a stack of his research papers, articles, discussing his methodology and some interview transcripts.
Wow.
So buckle up, because we're about to go deep.
One of the things that struck me right away was the sheer breadth of Dr. Waleed's work.
Yeah.
He's identified figures in the Quran that have been overlooked or misinterpreted. Okay. Like a female Iblis.
A female Iblis.
Yeah, and even a female angel of death named Mikal.
Okay, wait. A female angel of death. Now, that's something I've never heard before.
Right.
Doesn't that go against traditional interpretations?
It definitely challenges the conventional image of the angel of death.
Yeah.
Dr. Waleed argues that the Quran itself doesn't specify a gender for this figure. And his research suggests that Mikal, often associated with mercy, is actually the angel of death.
Wow.
Working in partnership with Gabriel.
So it's like he's finding these hidden figures within the text.
Yeah.
Does that mean he thinks these figures were intentionally obscured or just lost to history? And what does this say about how we've understood these figures for centuries? Are we imposing our own cultural biases on these interpretations?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
And those are exactly the kinds of questions Dr. Waleed's work invites us to consider.
Right.
He's not necessarily saying there was a deliberate attempt to hide these figures,
Well,
but rather that our understanding of the Quran has evolved over time and been influenced by various factors.
okay.
It's about looking at the text with fresh eyes and being open to new possibilities.
All right, so female angels, hidden figures. This is already getting interesting,
Yeah.
but we've got a lot more ground to cover.
Yeah.
What else has Dr. Waleed uncovered?
Well, one of the most intriguing aspects of his work is this concept of a fundamental symmetry between Israel and Adam.
Right.
He argues that there's a parallel between their roles and experiences, and that understanding this symmetry can unlock a deeper understanding of their stories.
Okay, so Israel and Adam,
Yeah.
what kind of symmetry are we talking about here? Are they both considered prophets?
That's where Dr. Waleed's distinction between Anbiya and Nabiyyin comes in.
Okay.
He says Anbiya are messengers of the angels, while Nabiyyin are prophets of the enlightened. He places Israel in the category of Anbiya
Got it.
and Adam as a Nabiyyin.
Okay.
So while both are messengers, their roles and sources of authority differ.
So how might this symmetry change our understanding of their stories? I mean, they seem like very different figures on the surface.
Yeah.
Adam being the first human and all that.
It encourages us to look beyond the literal narratives
Okay.
and consider the symbolic significance of their actions and experiences. For example, think about the concept of disobedience.
Okay.
Adam disobeyed God in the Garden of Eden, and Israel, according to some interpretations, has repeatedly disobeyed God's commandments.
I see. So by understanding this symmetry, we might be able to draw parallels between their struggles and the lessons learned from their experiences.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. But wait, earlier you mentioned that Dr. Waleed has also made some pretty radical claims about geography.
He has.
What's that all about?
Right. This is where Dr. Waleed's meticulous approach to language really comes into play. He argues that Bakka, not Mecca, is the true sacred house mentioned in the Quran.
Wow.
And even more surprisingly, he claims that Misor, often interpreted as Egypt,
Right.
actually refers to Jerusalem.
Okay, that's a pretty big claim to make.
Oh, it is.
Mecca and Jerusalem are two of the holiest sites in Islam.
Absolutely.
How does he even begin to support that?
He points to a wealth of linguistic and historical evidence.
Okay.
For example, he highlights the discovery of a village of Arabs in Hebron with ties to both Hashemite and Meccan Hebrew origins.
Wow.
This, he argues, lends credence to the idea that the region around Jerusalem played a more central role in early Islamic history than previously thought.
So he's not just looking at the Quran in isolation. He's also taking into account historical discoveries and archaeological evidence to build his case. This is like a historical detective story.
Exactly. He's piecing together clues from different sources to arrive at a new understanding of these crucial geographic locations in the Quran.
All right. I am hooked. This is already challenging so many of my assumptions. But I'm dying to know, how does he connect these geographical discoveries to the rest of his research? What comes next in this grand puzzle?
Well, this rethinking of geography leads Dr. Waleed to re-examine the timeline of historical events mentioned in the Quran.
Okay.
And this is where things get even more interesting. He uses the Quran as a historical source,
Right.
applying his analytical skills to shed new light on figures like Abraham and the Babylonian civilization.
Hold on. Using the Quran as a historical source, isn't that a bit controversial?
Well,
I thought it was primarily seen as a spiritual text.
it's true that the Quran is primarily viewed as a religious text.
Right.
However, it also contains numerous historical accounts and references.
Okay.
Dr. Waleed's approach isn't about replacing traditional historical sources,
Right.
but rather about using the Quran to offer a different perspective and potentially uncover new insights.
So it's like adding another layer to our understanding of history. I'm curious, what kind of historical insights has he actually gleaned from the Quran? Give me an example.
Well, take the concept of prayer timings.
Okay.
Dr. Waleed discovered a fascinating detail about the middle prayer, Azur. He found that the Quran actually provides a very specific time frame for this prayer based on the position of the sun.
Interesting.
This is a detail that has often been overlooked, but it demonstrates a scientific precision within the text.
Okay, I'll admit, I'm impressed. He's combining his scientific background with his Quranic knowledge to uncover these hidden details. It makes you wonder how much more is hidden within these ancient texts.
Precisely. It highlights the importance of approaching the Quran with an open mind and a willingness to question assumptions.
And speaking of questioning assumptions, we need to talk about Dr. Waleed's ideas about angels and the soul. His research suggests that the angel of death is actually female and partnered with Gabriel. I mean, how does he even come to that conclusion?
He argues that the Quran itself doesn't specify a gender for the angel of death. He then connects this to his research on Mikal, often associated with mercy, and posits that Mikal is actually the angel of death working in partnership with Gabriel.
Wow.
It's a bold claim that challenges our preconceived notions about these figures. What do you think about this idea?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, honestly. I mean, it's so different from what I've always been taught.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, it's incredibly intriguing.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder if we're imposing our own cultural biases on these interpretations. Like, is our concept of the angel of death as a male figure based on something inherent in the text, or is it just a reflection of societal norms?
That's the beauty of Dr. Waleed's work. He encourages us to question, to re-examine, and to dig deeper. He's reminding us that interpretation is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the angel of death. He also talks about the first female soul in creation and her hidden roles.
Okay.
He's uncovering these narratives that have been largely ignored or misinterpreted.
Right.
And it's forcing us to confront our assumptions about gender roles within the Quran.
It's like he's adding a whole new dimension to our understanding of these ancient texts. So we've got female angels, a reinterpretation of history and geography, and now this deeper exploration of gender roles. What else is there?
Well, we haven't even touched on Dr. Waleed's linguistic research yet.
All right.
He claims there's a precise linguistic system within the Quran, a documented numerical system for meanings.
Okay.
He's delving into the structure of the text, looking for patterns and codes that reveal hidden layers of meaning.
Okay, that sounds incredibly complex. What does he mean by documented numerical system for meanings?
This is where his analytical skills really shine. He's found that every concept in the Quran is presented in pairs.
Interesting.
Reflecting the idea of balance and symmetry that we talked about earlier.
Right.
And these pairs are linked not just thematically, but also through a numerical system based on the Arabic alphabet.
Okay.
Each letter has a numerical value, and when you add up the values of the words in these pairs, they often have significant correlations.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like he's cracking a code within the Quran.
Exactly. For example, he discovered that the word dunya, this world, and akhira, the hereafter,
Right.
not only form a conceptual pair, but also have a numerical relationship that points to this concept of balance. He's uncovering this deeper level of intentionality and design within the text.
This is honestly mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And to think most people would never even notice these details. It really makes you appreciate the depth and complexity of the Quran.
Absolutely. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Dr. Waleed has uncovered so much more, including a phenomenon he calls the balance of stability.
Oh, wow.
Where certain words are strategically placed within the text to create a sense of equilibrium.
Wait, balance of stability. What's that all about? Wait, balance of stability. What's that all about?
It's fascinating. Dr. Waleed noticed that certain words appear at very specific intervals within the Quran. These words often relate to concepts like stability, steadfastness, or God's unwavering presence. And their placement seems to create a kind of rhythmic equilibrium throughout the text.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. So he's finding all these hidden patterns.
Yeah.
Numerical codes, and even a sense of rhythm within the Quran.
Yeah.
It's like he's revealing a whole new dimension to this text.
And that's what makes his work so exciting.
Yeah.
He's not just offering a different interpretation. He's inviting us to see the Quran in a whole new light.
It makes you wonder if we've barely scratched the surface of what this text has to offer.
I think you're right.
So where do we go from here? I mean, we've covered so much ground.
Right.
Female angels, a reinterpretation of history and geography, gender roles, hidden linguistic codes, numerical systems. It's a lot to process.
It is a lot, and it's okay to feel a little overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I think the key takeaway here is that Dr. Waleed's work is a call to action.
Okay.
It's a challenge to engage with the Quran on a deeper level, to question our assumptions, and to embrace the ongoing process of interpretation.
Yeah, and even if you don't agree with all of his conclusions, he's raised some incredibly thought-provoking questions. Questions about the nature of prophecy, the role of gender, the hidden layers of meaning within the Quran. This deep dive has definitely given me a whole new perspective.
And remember, Dr. Waleed isn't claiming to have all the answers. He's simply opening up new avenues for exploration.
Right.
He's saying, hey, look at this. Look at what I've found. Let's explore this together.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a powerful message.
It's a message that resonates deeply with me. It reminds me that there's always more to learn, more to discover, and that the journey of understanding is never truly complete.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the work of Dr. Khaled Waleed, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
How might Dr. Waleed's approach inspire us to re-examine our own beliefs and assumptions, not just about religious texts, but about the world around us? What hidden connections are waiting to be discovered if we approach things with a fresh perspective and a willingness to question the familiar?